Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports. I am the host, Pat Flaherty, and I am joined once again by my co-host, Brandon, the Coach Perry. Brandon, how you doing, my friend?
What's up, Pat? We have got an exciting show this week with a wide range of topics. I'm really excited to dive into it, so let's get started.
Absolutely, man. It's been a crazy sports week. We thought it was going to slow down in sports after the Super Bowl. That hasn't happened. We're going to start off with one of the craziest sports stories yesterday. Before we do that, folks, make sure you follow us on Twitter. You can see our Twitter handles at the bottom of the screen. And also make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Comeback Sports, so that you can watch all the videos that we've been putting out over the last couple of weeks. But the big story yesterday, of course, was the car accident with Tiger Woods. And Brandon, what was your first thoughts as soon as you saw that Tiger Woods had gotten in that serious accident?
Yeah, I was extremely shocked. I think like most people were, and it was just one of those things where, wow, it's just another thing happening to Tiger and just another thing that he's having to go through in his life and just another hurdle that he's going to have to overcome. But I think it's something that he can definitely do, and I think if anybody that can bounce back from this again, it would be Tiger Woods. And so I'm looking forward to seeing him recover and get healthy and come back. But I mean, we're talking about the greatest golfer of all time and arguably one of the greatest athletes of all time. So this is definitely a huge story, and I'm really hoping that he can recover quickly and get back to a normal life first before he gets to actually get back on the golf course and worry about that at all. But was extremely shocked when I saw the news, saw it across my Twitter feed, and then went to the news immediately. And sure enough, it was plastered all over the TV and all over the news. So I was just diving into the content as much as I could yesterday. But yeah, it was really shocking to see. And I mean, I guess the good news is that, they're saying that there was no sign of impairment. And I think a lot of people were worried about that when we first saw the accident. And so it was good to see that they're saying that there's no sign of impairment, and I'm just hoping that Tiger can make a speedy recovery. But like I said, if there's anybody that can bounce back from this, I'm expecting it to be Tiger Woods.
Yeah, no question. He certainly recovered from a lot before. I'll tell you, when I first saw the news, I didn't see any pictures or anything. And then I said, again, he got another car accident. What's this one about? Because the last one was obviously about what's going on at home with his wife and his infidelity and everything like that. And then I saw the car, the actual accident. And the second thing I thought about, honestly, was Kobe Bryant. And I was like, are we going to lose another icon right now? No, I think there's more mixed feelings about Tiger than there is about Kobe Bryant, but I think Tiger, the last couple of years has changed a little bit. A lot of the golfers have talked about how, I heard this from one of the ESPN reporters. I can't remember his name. He's one of the golf reporters. He does a fantastic job. But he said that before Tiger on the golf course, in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, when he, was just killing everybody, said that Tiger wanted to make the golfer he was playing with uncomfortable out on the course. So he didn't want to socialize. He didn't want to talk to him. He wanted to make that golfer feel uncomfortable. Makes total sense. He's an assassin. He wants to kill everybody on the course. But I think that kind of spilled over into some of his personal relationships with players and fans and so forth. Now it seems like, since everything that happened to him the first time around, what the reporter said is players are now saying, now Tiger, the first thing he wants is to be comfortable with the guy he's playing with. He wants to enjoy the game and enjoy playing with a fellow golfer, even though he's still trying to win the tournament. So he's still got that killer instinct. Yet he wants to be comfortable and be able to socialize with the other golfer. So it sounds like Tiger's changed a little bit. That Masters win 2 years ago in 2019, where his son was embraced by him after he won, just was like a nice moment for him. After everything that he's been through, and a lot of it's self-inflicted. And there's a lot of stories about Tiger. But then when you see that, you're like, another international icon in sports, a guy who changed the game. And again, I thought of Kobe Bryant, and I thought the worst. So I'm just glad, unfortunately, he had a compound fracture in his leg. He's got a metal rod in his leg now. So luckily, we can now sort of, I'm sure there's still going to be a lot of rehab, but we can still sort of now start to talk about, is he going to be able to play golf again? Before, the first thing we're like, did he survive the crash? Number two, is he paralyzed? And now we can sort of talk about, is he going to be able to compete athletically?
Yeah, I mean, I think one person that, Tiger Woods can talk to is Alex Smith. Look at Alex Smith with his
Yep.
broken leg, and, he had a rod inserted into his leg. People thought he wouldn't even actually survive, I think. And then obviously he beat that and is back playing football now. And I mean, that's a whole different story because he's talking about how the Washington football team doesn't even want him anymore because they weren't expecting him to even come back to be able to play. So I think Tiger Woods would do great to connect with Alex Smith. But like I said, this is a guy that I'm expecting to bounce back. I'm expecting him to bounce back. I'm really looking forward to seeing him get healthy and looking forward to seeing that day when they roll him out of the hospital and getting to see his face again. Because like you said, he is a legend. I think this is one of those things where, I mean, I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan. And I might take a little flack for it, but I've always supported him for all of these things, and I'll probably still support him through almost anything he does. Like a lot of people, I mean, there's only one Tiger Woods, and like I said, the greatest of all time. And I think a lot of people are just really wishing for a speedy recovery. And you saw a lot of his fellow golfers, like Justin Thomas, coming out wishing him a speedy recovery. So I think that goes to what you were saying with how he's turned more into a mentor to a lot of these other golfers that are currently playing instead of just being, that number one guy on the top of the mountain that everybody was really trying to chase down. But somebody else that's on the top of the mountain right now that kind of feels that heat, Naomi Osaka winning the Australia Open. And like I said, honestly, I think it was really a passing of the torch moment when she beat Serena in the career. And I'm looking forward to seeing her next tournament. Hopefully we'll get to see that soon.
Yeah. She's fun to watch. Osaka's very fun to watch, and for the longest, sometimes women's sports they have trouble getting eyeballs sometimes. And it's not because the play isn't as good. It's just because it's not as popular as men's sports. It hasn't been around as long. Women's tennis, I would much rather watch women's tennis than men's tennis right now. There's so many good women's tennis players. It was fun to watch Brady, she's from America. She was like I think 22nd seed. She lost to Osaka in the final, but it was fun to watch her. You have now a young American who's coming up and competing in Grand Slams. Women's tennis is great right now, and it's all because of the Williams sisters. Venus first, and then Serena, like we mentioned, the greatest of all time. And now it's Osaka. She's going to be carrying the torch, like you mentioned. So that's going to be something that I think we're going to see for years to come. Osaka win a lot of tournaments, especially some Grand Slams. Now we're switching to another sport that normally is indoors but was outdoors recently, and that's the NHL game at Lake Tahoe. The Bruins playing out there. That was a lot of fun as a Bruins fan to watch. And Brennan, what were some of your takeaways from that game out in Lake Tahoe?
I mean, first off, the NHL has had some great outdoor classic games. Obviously, they had one at Fenway that was absolutely amazing. I believe they had one at Chicago Cubs Field. Was it Wrigley Field they had one at?
I believe it was either Wrigley or Soldiers Field. I can't remember which one, but it was one of those. You're absolutely
right. So that was another amazing one. So I think they've had some amazing outdoor venues, but I think this is the cream of the crop, and this is the best one so far. Being on the edge of Lake Tahoe, seeing the mountaintop in the back with the snow on Lake Tahoe itself. I think the only thing that could have made those games better was having a bunch of fans probably around, and that would have made the scene just a lot more exciting. But I was excited to watch those games. It was awesome to see the Bruins game. I mean, the defenseman, I think it was Charlie Coyle, got his stick caught up into the tree. So he had a moment where his stick broke and it flew up into the tree. So he had to go back to the bench to get another stick. So I think you never see a moment like that, obviously, in an arena game. So to see a moment like that in an outdoor classic, I think was just amazing. But once again, I think, you saw a few good games there and the Bruins were in one. But to me, the real story was the location being right there on the edge of Lake Tahoe. To me, that was really what made it all. I'm really looking forward to seeing if they can top it next year in their outdoor classic and where they're going to go from here.
Yeah, absolutely. The outdoor classic, like you mentioned, has been one of the best things the NHL has done probably over the last, couple decades, just as far as promoting the game, getting more folks involved. Out of my the four major sports, four major team sports, NHL is probably fourth for me. But even though I'm a Bruins fan and I love watching the Bruins, luckily they're good, so it makes them easy to watch. But these are always the games that I want to watch. Before the playoffs, the postseason in the NHL is unbelievable, but the Winter Classic games are great. And this year, obviously, you can't be in a big arena or a big ballpark or a big football stadium like they've done in the past. I thought this was brilliant. Because you can't have fans, go to some place that is just picturesque. It looks like a painting is behind the hockey rink. And then on top of that, because you can't have fans, you do have those things like the trees surrounding the hockey rink. Because I know when they first started doing it at Fenway and at some of the other stadiums, did it at Gillette one year, players would talk about it being kind of like pond hockey outside. This was even more so because of the surrounding elements, like you mentioned. And just some of the amazing shots. I know at the start of the game, especially with the TV lighting, because of the sunlight, it was tough to see the puck a little bit with the shadow and sunlight. But later on, as the lighting started to even out, it just looked amazing. It was a great idea. And I'd love to see them do something like this again, either there or somewhere else, with that type of amazing setting.
Yeah, I think, like you said, I would love a postcard like that with that picturesque setting, and hopefully the NHL goes ahead and puts that on a poster somewhere, because that really was such a great setting. We're really looking forward to seeing what they can do with the Outdoor Classic going forward. But moving on to our fourth topic, the Carson Wentz trade to the Colts. I haven't hit it at all. I'm not a Carson Wentz fan at all. So I'll save my bit for that. But yeah, I mean, what do you think the Colts are getting here?
So I think the Colts are in a very similar position as the Rams. They're not as maxed out in their salary cap as much as the Rams are, but the Colts have an excellent offensive line, probably one of the best in the NFL. They have some good receivers. I think T.Y. Hilton's a free agent or a restricted free agent, or they might move on from him because of salary cap, but they could still keep him. And then they also have some good young receivers, definitely good young running back core. And they've really built up their defense. Chris Ballard has done a great job. Now that Rivers is retired, and even Phillip Rivers wasn't quite where at an elite level, they had to make a move. And they're not going to be able to get, an elite quarterback. They're not going to be able to bring in Deshaun Watson. They don't have the cap space. They're not going to be able, they don't have the picks that some other teams can offer. So I think this was really the only move they could make. So they're getting a quarterback who has had success in the past, but it's been several seasons. I mean, it's been a little while. So, and he had a disastrous season in 2020. So the one person that could possibly fix Carson Wentz is Frank Reich, who's the head coach of the Colts. I believe one of the assistant coaches that was with Reich in Philly is also with the Colts right now. So they're the one team that can kind of fix what's ailing Carson Wentz. So I think if any team was going to do it, it was going to be Indianapolis. They gave up a lot, but they're kind of stuck. They need a quarterback. They need somebody who's not just going to be an old. They weren't going to get Ryan Fitzpatrick and get any better than they were last year. All due respect to Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I think is probably the best backup quarterback in the NFL. If you get Jimmy Garoppolo, is he that much better than Wentz? He's probably a little bit better, but he probably would cost more. We're not even sure if the 49ers are trading him. So, the Colts can't wait for Garoppolo to get released in training camp, or like I said, they can't go trade for Watson. I think this was the only move the Colts could make. So I think it makes sense, but it's, there's a big risk here with how Wentz has, sort of regressed over the last couple of years.
I think you hit it there with the risk. And I think so Frank Reich and the GM are pretty much risking and betting their job here on Carson Wentz, going out to having to make it. And I'm shocked that I kept telling people, to me, Carson Wentz was only worth a 5th-round pick. So I think they actually got a lot more, Philly out of the Colts than he was actually worth. So I think great trade for Philadelphia Eagles. And, I will say a good trade for the Colts, because they do need somebody at quarterback, like you said. So they are in a tough position with having to fill that position. However, I just am not, like I said, I'm not sold on Carson Wentz. I never have been. Even coming out of the draft, I had said this guy is not a first-round talent. I thought that year he should have probably been a 3rd-round talent. Coming out of I know people are saying, and I got some flack for this on Twitter earlier this week, being like, oh, all you do is watch Power 5 teams and maybe if you watch the FCS teams a little more. I watch FCS football. I watch a ton of FCS football. But here's a big difference. There's a big difference when you're facing FCS defensive backs and then you come and face NFL defensive backs or even Power 5 defensive backs. And I think Carson Wentz has been finding that out over the last few years. And I think the two that will always be linked together is the guy that got traded before him is Jared Goff. And obviously those guys went 1-2 that year in the draft. And I think the better of the two is Jared Goff. I think the Detroit Lions are going to get the better out of these trades because he's just a better player overall. Coming out of Cal and facing better defenses and being in a pro-style offense, he was more pro-ready coming into the draft. So like I said, I've never been sold on Carson Wentz. I do think the Colts did have to make a pull and make a play for a quarterback. However, I don't think he's going to be the guy that's going to get him over the hump. And, they're going to obviously need to re-sign T.Y. Hilton if they're going to want to have a number one target for Wentz to throw to and have any options. But like I said, I'm not sold on Carson Wentz. I'd bet more on this being the end of Carson Wentz's career here over these last few years. And I'm not saying that he will be out of the league, but I think he'll be shifted more to a position like a backup quarterback that's more suited to his style of play and his skill set. But people that could lose their job, like I said, are the GM and the head coach over this move.
Yeah, definitely a risky move. If anybody can fix him, I think it is the Colts. He didn't have a lot there in Philly over the last couple of years with the offensive line really banged up and really no weapons other than Zach Ertz. So we'll see how it goes in Indy. Another player who's had a tough time, without having any help and being in a tough situation with his team has been Sam Darnold. He's our next topic. Brendan, do you think that Sam Darnold is now that Wentz and Stafford have been traded, do you think Darnold is the next quarterback on the trading block?
I think he's been on the trading block. I think the Jets have been trying to trade him the year after they selected him in the draft, to be honest. I think they were trying to move him and just nobody was willing to give up what the Jets wanted for him. And I think people would trade for him. I think the Jets are just trying to get too much out of this. Like, they probably want a first-round pick in return. And I don't think teams are willing to replace their first-round pick that they blew on Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold came out of college a little too early. I think he would have done a little bit better staying at USC a year or two more and just developing a little bit more. And I think, obviously, the main thing that kind of haunts him, obviously, is the I'm seeing ghost comment. And I think that's just something that just proves that how he's just not ready when he was saying that against the New England Patriots. What was that, in 2019, I believe?
I think so.
So, yeah, I just think that is the haunting moment that is haunting him right now because he just seems like he's not ready or he hasn't been able to even go up or progress from that moment. So, it doesn't shock me that the Jets are trying to move him. What are they going to get in return? They're definitely teams that need a quarterback. Obviously, hey, this guy that I'm wearing on my shirt right now should be in the league. And he proved that, in my point, that there's definitely a shortage of quarterbacks in the league. This guy should be playing. So it wouldn't shock me if Sam Darnold would get another starting job. And I think it would be good for both Sam Darnold to move on and to get a different location and to start his career and maybe with a different coach. And I think it'd be good for the Jets to move on at this point. Obviously, they've moved through their head coach as well. It wouldn't shock me to see it happen if it does. But I'm not sure if it does happen. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to trade him.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot for the Jets. Clearly, as long as they like any quarterback after Trevor Lawrence in the draft, they can take whoever they want. If they love Zach Wilson, which everybody thinks, they'll take him. If they love Justin Fields, they'll take him. They have a lot of options. They also, if Robert Saleh wants to work with Darnold and try to, see if they can still get something out of him, they could either use the second overall pick to grab somebody else that they love other than a quarterback, or trade that second pick and get a boatload of picks over the next couple of years. And if Darnold doesn't work out this year with the new coaching staff, they could just go after the best quarterback next year because they're going to have so many draft picks, first rounders and second rounders, if they trade back. So the Jets have a lot of options. Joe Douglas is the GM. He's going to, I'm sure he's going to look at all the different options. Deshaun Watson has still been, the guy that supposedly the Jets have a shot at. Deshaun said he would go there. I don't know why. I don't know why you want to go to the Jets, but Deshaun Saleh is probably the biggest draw. So we'll, and being in New York. So if you might see Darnold go in the Deshaun Watson trade if that ever happens, because the Jets can offer more than anybody to the Texans. But yeah, I think Darnold gets moved. Saleh's been trying to say that he wants to see what he has in Darnold, but when you ask a coach as soon as you get to a new team, what do you think of the starting quarterback? He's not going to say, "Oh, I think he sucks." Like, he's not going to say that, So obviously he's going to try to talk the guy up. If he wants him to get traded or if he wants to give the guy confidence, he's going to talk him up. So I think he's going to get traded. You see Wentz just got, traded for a third-round pick, a second-rounder that could turn into a first-rounder. I think that Darnold could get something maybe similar. I don't think a first-rounder, but I think a 2 and a 3 is a possibility for Sam Darnold. Right now, with all these quarterbacks moving around and all these teams that are, looking for quarterbacks this season.
Yeah, Sam Darnold just as good as Carson Wentz in my opinion. So I think you're right as far as value now. A second or a third round pick, maybe a third or a fourth round pick, depending on the team that you get to engage in that trade. And maybe, like you said, maybe the Texans can pull out a swap. And I know the Texans, that would actually help them because they're going to be looking for a quarterback immediately. So maybe that would help them to stopgap their team of getting Darnold in return. But moving on to a big topic of the week, Cam versus the camper. And I mean, we're talking about Cam Newton versus the disrespectful camper. So we're going to go to Twitter for a video real quick. I'm rigged. I'm rigged. You're free agent. I'm rigged. He's free agent. Let me talk to your dad. Let me talk to your dad. Where's your dad? You're a free agent. Where's your dad? You're a free agent. You ass. Talk to them. You ass. Where's your father? You ass, man. You're a free agent. You're a free agent. You're a free agent. You're about to be cool. So, this was the big topic of the week right here. With this disrespectful camper in my eyes, and I know everybody's seen it. So, Pat, what do you think about it?
A kid that age, there's no way I would ever talk to a professional athlete like that. When I was younger, my dad used to bring me to the Patriots training camp at Bryant College every year, and especially before the Parcells Bledsoe years, Patriots were really bad. So you could actually really interact with the players. You could get close to them. You could get autographs. I used to shake their hands. They were nice. I was very respectful, called them Mister. Like, that's just how I was raised, to talk to a professional athlete. My folks tried to instill in me that they've accomplished a lot. They've worked hard to get to where they are. Those are the guys that you're trying to be. As a young athlete myself, I was trying to be like them. So I would never go up to a professional athlete who's gotten to the mountaintop and would disrespect them like that. Cam Newton, never mind the fact that he's just flat out a professional quarterback in the NFL. He's been the MVP. He was the first pick in the draft. He's won the Heisman Trophy. He had a tough year with the Pats, and there's a lot of factors. He didn't play well either, but there's a lot of factors that went into that. I wouldn't say this to, Jim Druckenmiller, or one of the quarterbacks who's never been good in the NFL. I wouldn't say this to, the Brady Six who have not lived up to any expectations. So why would you ever say this to Cam Newton? I think this is crazy. I think that kid's going to regret this, as he looks back, as he gets older, especially. I think that kid's going to regret things. I love when Cam said, where's the parents of this kid? I need to talk to the parents. I don't blame Cam for being mad. As the adult in the situation, he probably needs to kind of, just make sure it doesn't get out of hand. But it didn't get out of hand. Cam was just insulted, and I don't blame him.
Yeah, I think he handled it fairly well. I think, maybe a Cam in the past would have got even more upset. So I do think he handled it fairly well. And I think the comment of, where's your dad? Because a lot of times, the dad's the one at home being like, oh, Cam Newton's trash, Cam Newton's this and that. And then the kid kind of basically reiterates that stuff to Cam when he sees him. So I think he was like, I want to see your daddy. Like, where's your daddy? Where's the guy that's talking all this trash at home? But yeah, I just think a extremely disrespectful moment. like you said, disrespecting a player that is highly talented. I mean, there's no arguing what he did in college. There's no arguing what he's done in his NFL career. And we're talking about a player that's kind of in his second career, in my opinion. He went through a whole one career with the Carolina Panthers. You know, he played for them for so long, and they kind of used him up, obviously running the ball, passing the ball. So I kind of think, obviously, he's towards the end of his career. So for the kid to kind of be throwing jabs at him like, hey, you're a free agent. Honestly, he's only a free agent because of the Deshaun Watson thing. Once Deshaun Watson goes somewhere and people know where Deshaun Watson's going, the rest of the quarterbacks are going to fall in line and people are going to get signed left and right. Cam Newton is going to be one of them. He's going to sign a year deal, make another $1 million or plus. I mean, he just made $1 million playing 1 year of football with the New England Patriots. I'm pretty sure that kid's dad is not playing professional football and is not making $1 million. So it's like, if anything, go talk to your dad about being a free agent and being broke. So I just think it was a really disrespectful moment, especially at Cam Newton's camp, where he's taking his time out of his career to come and support these kids and support what they're doing. And this kid's going to go ahead and take a cheap shot to try to get some viral video. And so he's getting all the attention that he wants now. I know the kid tried to come out and put an apology out on Twitter. I mean, I'm not trying to hear it at all. I don't think a lot of other people are trying to hear it. So I think this is the moment where he's going to kind of learn, like I personally have myself too. When you burn a bridge like that, you're going to kind of have to, you know, wade through the water and get yourself to the other side at this point.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things with this generation, God, I sound like an old man, get off my lawn, but the millennials, or even what's the next generation called? I don't even know what the hell it is.
Don't know,
The young guys now, you know, you're starting to see that some of these younger athletes don't look at the ramifications or the consequences of doing something stupid on social media. I think that kid is going to see that, and he's going to learn it at a younger age. So that, let's say this kid plays college sports. Say he plays college football or college lacrosse or college baseball or college basketball, and actually, you know, realizes the last time I did something a little dumb on social media that went up on social media, I got a lot of flack for it. Even when I tried to apologize, I'm gonna be careful the next time I tweet something or put something up on Instagram. It'll be something completely different when he's in college. You know, whatever, barcode, Laserdisc, whatever it's going to be on social media. But I think he is going to learn a good lesson. But our next topic is still on the football field, and one former player who, you know, went to a smaller school to be the head coach is already seeing the fruits of his labor. That's Deion Sanders. He's at Jackson State, and they won their first game. What was it, 53-0 in his first contest? And, you know, I'm really excited to see what Deion does as a head coach. We all remember Deion from the early to mid-'90s as he was the best corner in football at some point. I know people want to say he didn't tackle very well. He didn't. So some people think it was Rod Woodson, which I might even debate that Woodson was the better corner, but we can discuss that another time. But Deion was awesome. I mean, the way that he was the best cover corner, definitely in NFL. And, you know, now that he's a coach, we think of him as this brash, you know, outgoing guy who then went to NFL Network and was good on the air and was charming and always was flashy. But I wouldn't be shocked if he's this gritty, you know, in-your-face head coach that's going to really make this program something special.
Yeah, I think you've seen that immediately with his impact in the first game with a 53-0 shellacking of Edward Waters, and just really coming out and setting the tone of a new program, a new university. And he's really put Jackson State University on the map. And from really day one, once Jackson State announced that they had signed him to a multi-year deal, I think things just turned around and turned around fast there. They started signing players really fast, and I'm talking about players that should have been going to Power 5 schools, now decided that, hey, they wanted to follow Deion Sanders to an FCS school, which also it's a traditionally historically black school. So I think, you know, putting those schools back on the map is amazing to see. I'm really excited to see what Deion Sanders is going to do with his Jackson State University team. Their next game up is against Mississippi Valley State. And to be honest, I'm expecting another big win out of this team because he's got several 4-star players on this team, several 3-stars, and a ton of 2-star players on this team. He's also got both of his sons playing on this team, which I think they're both arguably, I think, top 100 players. They're both 3- and 4-star players. One plays free safety, the other is a quarterback. So, you know, they're kind of following in their father's footsteps of just being amazing athletes and amazing football players. But the choice to follow their dad to Jackson State and help put Jackson State on the map, I think is huge. And I think you're going to start seeing that for years to come. You're going to start seeing a lot of great players go to Jackson State. So, you know, other historically black schools like a Grambling or like an Edward Waters or a Mississippi Valley State are really going to have to step up their recruiting and really try to get some higher players, or Jackson State is just going to take over the conference and maybe even go to the national championship for the FCS. And that's the football championship series for our viewers. So, you know, I'm really excited to see what Deion can do. He was one of my favorite players of all time. And like you said, for being a flashy player that would always say, hey, if you look good, you play good. If you play good, they pay good. That was one of his greatest lines. You know, he has uniform rules for his team, and they're pretty strict. So, you know, it goes to how he's a great coach, and it goes to how he's being team first, and he's a team-oriented coach. So, you know, I don't think you're seeing that flashy guy that you saw, obviously, as primetime when that was the guy that he created to be that player on the field and off the field. You're seeing now Coach Deion Sanders, and I think Jackson State is going to get all the fruits of his labor.
Yeah, I think the only time I really even knew what Jackson State was when people would talk about it. I think Walter Payton went there, right? So Walter Payton is their most famous alum, I believe. So that was the only time I ever really heard of Jackson State, you know. And now that Deion's there, they're on the map. And now that the FCS is playing their games, you know, right now in this fall 2 season that a lot of high schools in certain areas of the country, including here in Massachusetts, are playing. What's going to be very interesting is when Jackson State is able to schedule some of the big boy schools in the fall of 2021, because that's going to happen because Deion's there. Some of the SEC, ACC, you know, some of those schools are going to want to play those guys when they have to fill that schedule. You know, we always see, I think Michigan's played Appalachian State countless times. But Jackson State's going to be one of those schools now because Deion is there. And it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of things he can do with this program. And like you mentioned, you know, we saw it in, you know, especially with everything that happened with George Floyd, that, you know, the racial injustice movement and everything, a lot of highly recruited, highly touted basketball players out of high school started committing to historically black colleges. You're going to see that on the football side now with Deion over at Jackson State. And that's probably going to spill over to other historically black colleges as well.
Yeah, no, I'm expecting that. I'm expecting a lot of these schools to start getting a lot more talented players. And like you said, the basketball players definitely led the way. So cheers and the nod to them for being the first ones to say, hey, we're going to go ahead and change the recruiting game, and we're going to start committing to a lot of these historically black colleges. And then the football players started doing the same thing. So, yeah, I think it's going to be big and, you know, historically game-changing for Jackson State University. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Coach NEON DEION can do with Jackson State. But moving on to topic number 8. And, you know, hey, if you're enjoying this show, which I'm sure you are, hey, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying this show with Pat. So, but if you're enjoying this show, give us a subscribe, give us a like, make sure you're coming back every week. Give us a follow on Twitter. Our handles are at the bottom there. But, yeah, hey, big story. The Rockets releasing Demarcus Cousins and putting him on the free agent market. And, you know, my question to you and our producer, Ben, immediately was, hey, is Demarcus Cousins a good fit for the Boston Celtics?
Yeah, I like Demarcus Cousins. Certainly I like his talent. I think he's not the same sort of, you want to call it headache he was in Sacramento. I think he's definitely learned his lesson there. I think the thing with the Celtics, though, is they need somebody to go in there and be a leader. They need somebody that's somewhat of a veteran, which Cousins is now, that is going to take the team by the horns, talk to, Jaylen Brown, talk to Jason Tatum, and kind of stabilize the team a little bit, because they're just all over the place. A lot of young guys playing all over the place. They need a veteran to kind of come in there. Draymond Green has been tossed around if they can trade for him. Somebody like that to go in there and really help this team learn how to win, learn how to, if you're ahead by 24 against the Pelicans in the third quarter, learn how to step in their throat and finish off the game. I don't think Cousins is that guy. I think Cousins' basketball skills and his skill set fit the Celtics. His ability to stretch the floor is a big. He can block shots when he wants to. He can rebound when he wants to. So I think his talent would definitely fit with the Celtics. But I don't know if that's exactly the thing that they need. They need somebody to be in there, come in there and be a leader and teach this team how to win games.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think his talent level definitely matches what they need, though. And that's a talented big man right now. And, Tristan Thompson has been a bust. I love Daniel Tice. I love what he does on both ends of the court. I just really feel like he's better coming off the bench. So if we could have a Boogie Cousins coming in here and being a starting 5 player, I think that would help the Celtics a lot. I just don't think you're going to see this move happen, though. I think Cousins is probably going to look to maybe go to another team that's in championship contention, because right now the Celtics have just been on such a horrific slide that they're below 500. They're 6th in the East right now, and they're just looking not good. I mean, Boogie Cousins would have come in. I think he would help this team a lot. He would help to solidify the front court, and then you could let Jason Tatum and Brown do their thing. Hopefully Kemba will come back around. But I think Boogie Cousins is right now the premier free agent in the league right now, and the biggest question is, where is he going to go? What team is he going to go? Does he want to go and sign with the Lakers to try to make a title run with them? Does he want to sign with the Phoenix Suns, who are looking extremely hot right now with Devin Booker just absolutely tearing it up? Does he want to maybe go to Portland? It wouldn't shock me to see Portland make a run at the title with Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum once CJ comes back and is healthy. I think that would be a great play if he went to Portland and filled out their front court. But I would really like to see him come to Boston. I do think we need a big man, and I think that would be, like I said, that would put Daniel Tyson his best position to succeed coming off the bench. And so we need somebody. We need somebody to come in. I mean, even the Celtics owner just said he doesn't feel like this is a contender. Brad Stevens says he doesn't feel like they're in contention this year. So it's like we need something. We need something to happen.
Yeah, I think the Celtics need to make a move without question. I just don't know if Cousins is, what they need as a team. Not necessarily out on the floor with the basketball set. I think that's exactly what they need. But they need someone there to establish winning culture. And Cousins just isn't that guy. Not to say that he's, again, the guy that he was in Sacramento. I think he's changed. But he's not that winning player that I think they need to bring in. And that leads us to our next topic, which is Brad Stevens, Boston Celtics. A lot of chatter, a lot of noise because of how bad they've been over the last few weeks. And even, how poorly they adjusted to Miami in the playoffs, the Eastern Conference Finals last year. It was really then that people started to whisper, is Brad Stevens the coach that can bring the Celtics to a championship? He's done a good job getting them to the conference finals 3 out of the last 4 years, but can he take them over the hump? Now folks are saying that one of the biggest reasons for this slide is Stevens. Do you think this is time to get rid of Brad Stevens on the Boston Celtics?
No, I don't. I do not think it is. I think, a lot of people have been calling for him to be on the hot seat, and I'm fine with that. Put him on the hot seat, make him think that he might get fired, but I don't think that would be the right move moving on from Brad Stevens right now. I think he deserves at least a few more years in the organization. If you look at the coaches that we've had recently, obviously the last time that we won a championship was with the Big Three, and you can't say that we have a Big Three currently. So if we had a Big Three and we were doing like below 500 with a Big Three, I'd say, all right, the coach has to go. But we need some more talent around Jason Tatum, around Jaylen Brown. Kemba Walker has not been playing good recently. Like I said, Tristan Thompson's been a bust. Marcus Smart's been hurt. So it's just like we need some more talent on this team. They need to build up more of a roster for the coach to be able to do something. And I think that comes back to it a lot, and obviously I'm a coach, and trust me, I'll call coaches out really quick to say that maybe it's time for them to move on. I did it last week with Jim Christian from Boston College. But I think this one with Brad Stevens, I think it's time that you give him some more time, give him some more players, make a trade, maybe try to move up in the draft so this guy can have some more players to put his program into play. But a lot of people are calling for him to get fired, which is kind of shocking to me. Even Taylor Twellman on Sports Nation was saying that it might be time for him to go. But me as a coach, I'm saying no, this guy needs more time. Me as a Boston Celtics fan, I'm saying no, this guy needs more time. I like what Brad Stevens brings as a coach. I like his level-headedness. I like his passion for the game. I like his knowledge for the game. He's always drawing up great plays out of timeouts. He's had this team playing great and in position in the past. I just think we're just a few pieces away from being able to get back to that.
Absolutely. I think that I think what you have to do here, if you're Danny Ainge or you're Wick Grossbeck, because Danny Ainge might be on the hot seat as well at the end of the season. I think you have to what you have to consider is you fire Stevens right now, you're still not fixing this team this year. There's never been I don't think there's ever been an NBA team that fired their coach mid-season and then the new guy took over and they won the title. I know that that's happened with times where coaches got fired mid-season and then they ended up being a playoff team because a change really helped the team. But I don't think that a team's ever won a title firing a coach mid-season. So what's the point if that's not going to get you to the NBA championship? Because Stevens has gotten them to the Eastern Conference Finals. So if you just get back there with a new coach, what's the difference? So I think what you're going to do here, if you're the Celtics, is if you make a move at the trade deadline, it could be a sort of smaller move or it could be that big trade exception move. If you make a move, shuffle the roster around a little bit, and then you don't see an improvement in the team for the rest of the season, then you fire Stevens because it's time. And it's not all his fault. There's a big piece of blame pie to go around to everybody. But Stevens is part of that. So you got to look at Kemba Walker's not playing well right now. He hasn't lived up to the expectations or his contract. Tatum and Brown are awesome. I love those guys. I can't wait to root for those guys for years to come. They've been really good in some games. In other games, they're not the superstars yet. They're not superstars yet. They're just not. They're not there yet. And they have to know that as well. And I think that's a big thing with the Celtics. The other thing is there's too many guys on that roster. There's too many different guys that need playing time. One game, it's Nesmith and Pritchard and Semi Ojeleye. The next game, it's, Thompson's getting more playing time. Robert Williams needs to play a lot. Pritchard needs to play a lot. Nesmith needs to play a lot. Jeff Teague, they don't need him anymore. I don't know what they're going to do with him. Carson Edwards doesn't play at all. You still got Grant Williams. There's guys that just, they're not going to get time, and the roster is just so clogged that if you can package a few of those guys and get a upgraded veteran or however you can fit it in the trade machine on ESPN.com, if you can try to figure it out, do it. And but I think if Stevens doesn't turn this around, at least so that they're a respectable playoff team when they get to the second or third round and really just put a good effort together and their roster is the limit for them in the playoffs, then you bring Stevens back. If they are the better team in a series, more talented team with a better roster, and they get out-coached in the playoffs, or let's just say they don't make the playoffs after making a move, then I think you got to fire Stevens and you got to find somebody else. I hate to say it, big fan of Stevens, but I think you do have to make a move if this doesn't turn around at pretty soon. After the All-Star break trade deadline, if you don't see changes and you don't see better things on the horizon for the Celtics, then you do have to fire Stevens.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, like you said, if they make a roster move and they upgrade the roster and you're still getting the same result, then you'll have to move on. It'll just be that time. But I'm hoping that they don't move on from certain players, especially rookie Peyton Pritchard. I think he's just played amazing in his rookie year. I'd love to see him on the Celtics roster for years to come. I was talking with my pops the other day, and we were saying we would love to see a pass-first point guard come in here so Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown could just play off the ball, not have to worry about ever handling the ball. Just, like a Rajon Rondo come in and obviously just dish the ball out and let them be a star. I think if you got a pass-first point guard on this team and you bring in somebody to solidify the front court, I think that would be huge to going forward to helping this Celtics team be a lot better. But moving on to the last topic of the night, the Boston Red Sox, and what player is going to have a big bounce back for the Boston Red Sox here. I'm curious to hear what you say, Pat, because honestly, this is a little bit outside of my profession.
Yeah, no worries, man. The Red Sox were terrible last year, and it was definitely disappointing. I think we're lucky that it was a shortened season because we didn't have to watch them as much. I probably watched the least amount of Red Sox games last year as I've done in a long time. But they still had some guys that were okay. I mean, Xander Bogaerts has been very consistent over the last few years. I think he's going to stay consistent. There's two guys that I think have a big chance to be bounce back players this year for the Red Sox in their lineup. And I think they kind of go hand in hand. One is Rafael Devers. He wasn't terrible last year, but his OPS was well under 800. Didn't quite hit and get on base the way that he normally does. His fielding has still not been great, so he needs to get better at that hot corner at third base. And then I think if Devers is better in the lineup, he can also be helped and give help to JD Martinez. JD Martinez, has a big contract. He's really struggled last year. He's a creature of habit, and with the pandemic and all the different restrictions, and he kind of wasn't ready, from what I understand, to start the season, or like the everything was just kind of freaking him out a little bit is what they had to do last year. And I think his whole season was thrown off because of it. While, I got to say, JD, everybody's going through those things. You got to make your sacrifices. You got to figure it out. I do understand, knowing him, he's big on video. He's big on making adjustments throughout the game. He'll strike out in the first inning and come back in the third inning and know exactly what pitch the pitcher's going to throw. And then he hits a double or smashes a home run. That's just who JD Martinez is. I think he'll have a bounce back year this year. And again, that's going to help Rafael Devers hit better because they hit back to back in the lineup a lot of times. And also, I think Devers hitting better is going to help JD Martinez. So I think those two kind of go hand in hand. And I think those are guys that I think are going to have big bounce back years this year for the Red Sox.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Like I said, not a big baseball fan and don't know too much about it. When summertime comes around, to me, that's off season of football. So I'm just so deep in football at that point that I'm just like, they're playing baseball? Okay. But I will say I know enough, obviously, about the Boston Red Sox, the local team here, and the team. And I would say, obviously, as a coach, the positional group that you're going to want to bounce back to have a big group is this pitching core. And we're going to need them to bounce back and have a great year. Obviously, if we're going to compare sports a little bit, the pitchers are like the quarterbacks when it comes to football. If they're having a bad year, then the team's generally going to have a bad year. So I think we're looking for this pitching staff to come around, hopefully bounce back and lead us to having a good season. But I would like to see JD Martinez bounce back and have a good season. Like you said, with that big contract, and I mean, when he came here, everybody said this guy's legit. He's going to be the one that's going to kind of help us get on track. I haven't seen it yet, and I'd like to see it hopefully this year. Hopefully he'll have a big bounce back year. But I guess my prediction would be hopefully the pitchers will have a big bounce back year and put the Boston Red Sox in a much better position.
Yeah, I think the pitching staff is going to have a tough time really being an elite pitching staff because Sales, they're recovering from Tommy John. He's not going to be back till, I think, midway through the summer at best. He might even be, they might even wait till later on in the year. He probably won't be fully recovered from that surgery until next season. So you really don't have that ace. Eduardo Rodriguez had COVID last year, really affected his breathing. He's got heart stuff going on. So he has a long way to come back too. And they picked up Garrett Richards, who's had injuries in the past. But I do think this team is going to be a little bit better than last year. I think the younger guys now with another year under their belt, And just remembering how bad it was last year, it just wasn't fun to watch the Red Sox. Even if, they're not going to be a playoff team, which I don't think they will be this year, I think it's going to be more fun to watch the Red Sox this year. I think the lineup's going to be a lot better. And I think that they're going to score some runs, and you're going to at least want to tune into the Red Sox games this every summer evening coming up here in 2021. So that's going to do it, folks, for our 10 sports topics here on Comeback Sports. Remember, if you want to tweet at us, ask us questions, or just want to chat about sports or anything else, life advice, whatever. I don't know how much I can help you there, but follow us on our Twitter handles. You can see them at the bottom of the screen here. Both Brandon's and my Twitter handles are there. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Comeback Sports. You can check out all the videos. Our great producer, Ben Kudo, is going to cut up all the different segments and add those in as well, in addition to being able to watch the entire show. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Comeback Sports, and follow us on Twitter, folks. And we will see you next time on Comeback Sports next Wednesday. Yes, sir.
Real quickly, I want to go back just to that Deion Sanders thing. Wouldn't it be great, and to your point, how they're going to load up on probably a Power 5 school, if Jackson State played Florida State, Deion's old school? That would be an amazing matchup that I would love to see happen, and just a storyline there going forward with that I think would be great. But I think a story that we have to have on this show is that topic you talked about, who's the better cornerback, Woodson or Sanders going forward.
Oh, definitely. Maybe when we get closer to the draft, or we can even do it next week. I'd love to talk about that. We'll definitely fit that in the near future on this Comeback Sports show. So I love it, Brandon. Great idea, buddy. We'll definitely discuss that soon enough. Thank you again for joining us, folks. We really appreciate you checking us out. Again, subscribe, follow us on Twitter. We'll see you next time here on Comeback Sports, everybody. Have a good night.